Welcome to the Mayor of Money podcast with former Burlington Mayor Rick Goldring of Goldring Financial Leadership. In this podcast, we provide successful business owners, including doctors and dentists, with insights to minimize tax and risk while maximizing retirement income and future legacy. Join us for this journey as Rick draws from years of experience and guest experts, including successful entrepreneurs, to provide unique strategies and approaches to estate and financial planning matters, as well as business in general. Now, on to the show.
So my guest today on the Mayor of Money podcast is Mark Halpern, the CEO of wealthinsurance.com. And I've known Mark for almost 30 years. And he is one of the most successful people I know in our business. And after I was no longer mayor and I was heading my way back into the financial services sector, Mark was one of the first people I connected with. And I'm proud to say that Mark is a mentor. I utilize his counsel and we work together with charities. And we'll talk about that as we go in our discussion. But Mark, welcome to the Mayor of Money podcast. I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm thrilled I get to share Mark with the audience of the Mayor of Money. You've got an interesting history in the insurance business, investment business, et cetera, financial sector. How did you start?
Hey, well, first of all, Rick, thank you for having me. You know, we do go back a long time, almost 30 years. So, and we've had different sort of combinations and permutations along the way. So it's so lovely. And it's great to see all the great work you're doing to help business owners and wealthy families, and that we can help you at the same time. So yes, I've been 30 years in professional practice, Rick, but my real start was actually 47 years ago, almost 48 years ago. And that's when on March the 8th, 1974, my father died of a massive heart attack. He was 50. I was 11. I was the youngest of four boys. And my mother, who was 48 at the time, had to go back to work to support her family. The reason is because my father was a busy engineer. And unfortunately, he didn't have a will, and there was very little savings, and there was no life insurance. So fast forward, I work with some of Canada's most successful business owners and entrepreneurs and families, and you'd think they'd have everything all organized and together. But from my experience in the past, I would suggest 80%, maybe 85% of the time, it's not true. They're so busy looking after everything and everyone else when it comes to themselves. The financial architecture they started with and the financial furniture they have then doesn't match up at all with their current situation. So we help in three areas. One is in estate planning, just making sure, like you, Rick, things are looked after top to bottom with a proper team. Second area is tax minimization, so helping people keep their taxes for their family. And the third is philanthropy, so helping people create legacies, often by converting taxes into charity. And it's a very rewarding business helping families.
So one of the things I noticed about you, Mark, when you present information, that the actual sort of core of the information I've heard before, but I haven't heard it presented. I haven't heard the application of the structures and the strategies and the tools that are available to people used in such a creative way. I find that, we all have access to the same tools, just like an artist does, but people use them differently. And I think, you've got a real creative way to use some of the life insurance tools, the critical illness insurance tools, the different financial tools, different tax legislation in a very unique way. And one of the things you like to talk about is there's 4 true tax shelters left in Canada. Most people wouldn't think of that way.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of, we know one thing, taxes are going up. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And, you can see a wealth tax, a tax on principal residences, income tax, inheritance tax, capital gains tax is going up. So we have to look for ways, and we have to pay our fair share of taxes, Rick. Don't get me wrong. We live in an amazing country, and the only way it sustains itself is by tax revenue. But as I heard a great quote in the past, you have to pay your taxes, but you don't have to leave a tip. You don't have to leave a tip. So how can we help clients? So there are 4 tax shelters. One is your principal residence. So again, up until now, you buy it, you sell it, there's no tax on it. The second is a TFSA. It grows tax-free. You can access a tax-free and pass along tax-free, but it's limited to $6,000 a year. The other thing is lottery winnings. If you buy the lottery ticket in Canada, you don't pay taxes. Don't buy your tickets when you're down in Florida on vacation. And the last tax exempt product is called tax-exempt life insurance. So other than these four things, there's somebody at the CRA that we all love who has their hand out that wants to participate in your good fortune, except for these four things. So it's really important to understand, in particular, how tax-exempt life insurance works, because getting to your point before, people know what insurance is, but it's incredible how few people know what insurance does. And that's a big difference in terms of helping people understand and communicate to them.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues that business owners have is capital gains implications, and corporate owned life insurance can be a very unique way to structure life insurance to help cover off capital gains and other particular needs and key management needs, et cetera. Can you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, sure. So again, we meet a lot of people, and I'm sure Rick, as you do as well, that they're very busy and they're all involved in the offense. They love the building and the creativity and expansion and new investments and new opportunities. They love that, but they don't love the defense. As a matter of fact, most people don't have any defense in place at all. I was on a meeting yesterday afternoon with a couple. They have a net worth of $32 million in their 60s, and one's almost 70. No will. Wow. No powers of attorney, several corporations set up. That's more of the, not the exception, that's the rule. But when you have a business owner, what happens is, if you're somebody who's going to buy and hold that business, you know, perhaps pass it on to the next generation, let's assume that's the case. So, or you have investment real estate, you know, other than your principal residence, or investments of appreciated securities, not registered ones. So ultimately, there's going to be a tax bill, and it's very important that people spend the time doing that planning, that defense, in order to understand that there will be tax. So the question is, how do you pay that tax? You're either going to have cash sitting around, your family will have cash sitting around to pay it. But, you know, most people who are successful don't have cash sitting around, it's utilized. Or the second thing is that they'll have to borrow money to pay taxes, but who's going to lend it to them? It's not deductible interest, et cetera. Or the third thing, unfortunately, is people actually have to sell their businesses, or they have to sell their investment real estate, or they have to sell the cottage in order to come up with the money to pay the taxes, which is so insane. You know, that's the last thing you want. Or the final way of satisfying those tax obligations is through life insurance. Life insurance provides money when you need it most for pennies on the dollars, and it has to be structured properly. You mentioned about a corporation. So a lot of business owners have an operating company, and then they've got a holding company. That's really where all their activity should be going on. You can actually purchase life insurance in your corporation with an after-tax corporate dollar. So you now can have a structure in place with corporate insurance that kind of allows you to put as much money as you want into this policy to shelter it from passive tax, which today is at 50.17% of any growth you have. And you can actually access that money in case you need it for emergencies or opportunities. And the money comes out virtually tax-free to your family through the CDA, the capital dividend account down the road. So that has to be part of planning, but it's a very effective and efficient way of transferring wealth to the next generation. And unfortunately, most business owners don't know about it. And most advisors are really not spending time in what we call the higher net worth market. So it's really important what we're doing.
Excellent. Now, what's listed at the bottom of the four things on your sign behind you is philanthropy, and this is an area where we've done some work together. But we're going to talk about this in a little bit of detail now, because I believe there's tremendous opportunities for people to redirect taxes to charity without it affecting the impact on the net worth they want to pass on their family. There's some real creativity available here. But you've been involved in this, and you've got me involved in this as well. And I brought you out to meet some charities in Burlington.
We just did that great event 2 weeks ago.
The event with the Burlington Foundation. Absolutely. That's another YouTube video as well. But you're really creative in this area. What's drawn you to that particular area, Mark, the philanthropy area? And you've coined a terminology called accidental philanthropy, and I need you to explain that to us.
That's great. So look at, we grew up, I'm Jewish. Part of our religion is to give charity. It's actually, we call it tzedakah, which really means an obligation, or a social responsibility. So it's part of our our DNA growing up, always to give back. But fast forward, I realized that people do want meaning in their life. There's a part of their souls that they want to give back. The challenge is they always think that you have to be Bill Gates or Warren Buffett to be a philanthropist. That's number one. And also, they are very cognizant of the fact that charity begins at home. I need to take care of my kids and our grandkids, even more so today, just when we see how difficult and challenging it is and how expensive it is to sort of build a family or build a life now, especially if you're in the GTA. So if people realized that they had three possible beneficiaries to their estate, three, we all do: family, charity, and the tax department, and each of us could pick two of those, which two would you pick? Most people would say family and charity. So with proper planning, there's a way to be able to be remembered for leaving a large amount of money to charity, as opposed to writing a big check to the tax department. And that allows people to create legacies for their families and go from what I call success to significance. And it's a desire that we all have. So I'm not going to say, Rick, it's a cookie cutter, but I can just tell you that people are, because they haven't done the planning, they don't even know how much tax there is. I'll give you an example. I met a very nice woman out in your neck of the woods. She was 80, a widow, and she had $10 million of net worth. And she was very proud that she built that up herself. And when we met, I told her, I said, you're really not worth $10 million. You're only worth $6.5 million. Of course, she was very offended by this statement, but she'd had $1 million of capital gains in her non-registered portfolio. She has another $2 million of taxes going to be owed on her RIF. So when she got that information, that we were able to do some planning that her family ends up keeping $10 million. We create $3.5 million for charity, and the tax man only gets about $500,000, again, just by moving the shells around. So that's really a pleasure that I get. You mentioned about accidental philanthropy. It's a great term, and it gets people, motivated. But I see that there are two kinds of people in Canada. There are those who are either really charitable. They just got this education growing up and it's part of their lifeblood. And then there are those who are not. They just didn't really get that education, or it was, they're more have a scarcity attitude. So people always are afraid that to do charitable work, you're going to be disinheriting your kids. But what they have to realize is that you are actually adopting charity and disinheriting the tax department. So it's not like you're disinheriting your kids, you're disinheriting the tax department. And when people realize they have a choice of where those taxes go, suddenly they become accidental philanthropists. And the people who are already giving learn how to give more at the same amount that they were already giving, or give the same amount at less cost. So it's a beautiful thing when it's kind of like an aha moment. I did an event, Rick, for a hospital foundation recently, for their donors and for their board. And the president of the board, it was incredible. At the very end, he said the following in front of everybody. He said, Mark, I'm a fairly intelligent person, and I'm fairly successful as well, and I'm on many boards. He says, but I only knew about 2% of what you talked about today. How come I don't know about this? How come our donors don't know about this? And for me, that was like, that's the reality out there. So people like you, Rick, me, we're spreading the news, spreading the love, sharing our wisdom and knowledge to help people to create legacies. And I think it's a very satisfying part of our business. That's for sure.
It certainly is, and it's pretty simple to do. And I mentioned at the foundation event on Monday that my wife and I, Cheryl, are in the middle of donating a $100,000 joint last to die life insurance policy to the foundation. And it's elegantly simple. We're not encumbering any of our existing wealth that we want to pass on to our children. We're just taking $3,000 a year and we're putting that to the foundation. We get a tax receipt to the foundation. So it only costs us $1,500 a year to pass on $100,000 when the second one of us goes. So it's
how many years is that? How many years is that policy being paid for?
Well, I don't know, Mark, how long are my wife and I going to live?
Oh, so it's a level cost for, okay, fine. Well,
So I
you're
don't
only
know,
30,
but
you're
I
only
do know that
39. Yeah, yeah,
I do
okay.
know that 30 years would be good. And if it was paid out in 30 years, so 30 years at, do the math. I did the math. It works out to about 8% before tax I'm getting on the money. So it's, or the charity's going to get on the money, which is a good thing. But one of the things that we have talked about and with specific people is, and you think about all the aging baby boomers and the aging owners of different small and medium-sized businesses that are going to be selling those businesses, that represents a great opportunity for them to be significant in their plan giving, in their philanthropic efforts. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So they would be what I call accidental philanthropists, right? I'll give you. We've identified about 10 top prospects for accidental philanthropy, and please, any of your listeners can reach out to us, mark@wealthinsurance.com. We're happy to share that with you, or our tax letter article on that subject. But it would start with, singles, widows, and divorcees are right at the top because they don't have a spouse to roll everything over to tax-free. They're one incident away from a large tax disposition. Anybody who's done an estate plan, an estate freeze, or will be, is another great opportunity to become a philanthropist. But getting back to what you said, selling a business or selling investment real estate, the year that and hopefully people are listening will do some planning to take advantage of, let's say, the lifetime capital gains exemption, which they can multiply amongst family members. Make sure you do that. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a large amount of money paid to them, and they're going to have a large amount of tax that's due. And that year that you have a disposition like that is also the year that you can make your largest contribution to charity to offset that tax entirely. So I'll give you an example. We got approached by a family that sold $120 million of real estate. And at the end of the day, there's a $20 million tax. It's a good problem to have, right? When you have $120 million. But they were asked whether they would consider being philanthropic to offset that tax. And I got introduced to them. So instead, what we did was we took $40 million of that $120 million, Rick, and we set up a private foundation for that family. Now the $20 million of tax became $20 million of charity. So they got $40 million. And remember, they still have 80 left. So, it's all scalable number-wise. The problem is that the family's out of pocket $40 million. The second generation might get a little irked by that. So what we did was we set up some life insurance on a joint last to die basis for $40 million. That grows to $40 million, like what you did with your wife on the charitable policy. And we used a financing strategy or a premium financing strategy to be able to do it in the most cost and tax effective way possible. So the family's made whole, the taxes became charity, and now the family has a legacy of $40 million to distribute in perpetuity to any registered charities in Canada. And what a great feeling that is to not only, do some tax minimization through philanthropy, but really pass on a program to your children, and more importantly, your grandchildren, to be able to be givers. Because if they become givers, that affects you personally, and you just are a better person. You're a better husband, you're a better wife, you're a better child, you're a better grandchild. So we really believe in passing along those virtues and values to families.
The tax legislation around charitable giving in Canada, it's complicated because it's tax legislation, but there's been a tremendous number of improvements over the year to make it even more beneficial to donate to charities.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there have been, believe it or not, 25 different pieces of legislation just since 1995 to make it easier for Canadians to give to charity. Why? The government realizes they can't possibly support all those hospitals and museums and universities, so they have to find ways to make it more capable for Canadians to assist in that. One of those, which to me is still remarkably unknown, is that giving cash, checks, and credit cards is the most cost and tax inefficient way to give, yet most of Canadians give that way. One of the most efficient ways to give is by donating appreciated securities. So if you have appreciated non-registered stock or ETFs or mutual funds or segregated funds, the first thing you have to realize is that any of the gain that you've had, when you sell that, the government wants 27% of it. So if you started off with, a stock that had a zero cost base, let's say it was a penny stock, now it's worth $100,000, government's going to take $27,000, which means that $27,000 doesn't belong to you. It's not your money. You're only worth 83 or 73. So the government says you can actually take those stocks and donate those directly to a charity or to a donor advised fund that maybe you set up through the Burlington Community Foundation. And there's no capital gains taxes, and you get a full charitable receipt for the donation, which will help you offset taxes that are due coming April. Okay. They also said that you can use charitable donations to offset up to 75% of your personal income taxes due every year. And if you gave more, you can carry forward those unused charitable receipts for up to 5 years. And on death, which is the most amazing thing, the government says we'll allow you to give money to charity to offset up to 100% of your estate tax, including going back the previous year. So this is really something that, Canadians who are of affluence really need to know about, and it has to be part of their overall tax and estate planning, strategic philanthropy. It's just a way, again, of creating a lot of money for charity, all with the blessing of the tax department.
One of the simple ideas he came up with, pretty creative, was Cpp Philanthropy, because a lot of people get the CPP and they're just paying tax on it, and they can be doing something more creative with that.
Yeah, we came up with, again, an article on our Tax Letter Digest, I think, with the top 15 ways to use government benefits to benefit your family. So the first thing is this, that when we turn 65, a couple, 65-year-old couple generally will receive $26,000 in CPP. If you're a wealthy person, it's kind of entertaining. We're getting this pension now, right? But it's taxed fully, and you reinvest it and it's taxed again. And when you die, it disappears. Okay, just keep that in mind. So one way of, if you're philanthropic, is you could take that $26,000 and you could acquire about a $1.5 million life insurance policy, a joint policy. If that policy is owned by a charity or owned by your donor advised fund, then the $26,000 is considered a charitable donation, which means you're not paying any taxes on your CPP, and now you're recognized for leaving a gift for $1.5 million. Alternatively, pay the tax on the CPP, get that policy, but make it be the beneficiary to charity upon death, which will save your estate $750,000 of tax. Or the third way is, get the CPP, pay the tax, get the insurance policy, make your children the beneficiary of that, so they're getting $1.5 million, and donate your registered money to charity, which would have been taxed at 53.5%. So your kids are up 50% more. Charity got all of that tax-free money through your registered assets, and you didn't pay any tax along the way. And again, just by using that CPP. While we're at it, just even on the CPP, the listeners should realize that, once somebody dies, let's say they're single, widow, or divorced, that CPP is gone. If you want to leave a gift to your grandchildren, why not take that CPP, buy a life insurance policy, and make the beneficiary of that your grandchildren, right? Upon death, the CPP ends, but that life insurance policy, now you're giving a pension to your grandchildren,
right?
And how nice would that be if every year, on January the 1st, they received, $10,000, a check every year for $10,000 in mail from grandfather or grandmother, all based on using that CPP? How great would that be to perpetuate your memory and also help your kids a tremendous amount, all by using government benefits?
Yeah, no, it's a tremendous idea. And I guess that's what I mean. I heard an example of you, Mark, using tools that are there, life insurance, Canada Pension Plan, but putting them together in a very unique way and presenting it in a very unique way where people can get a pretty significant, impactful result as a result of being a little creative. And I think that's what you're good at. You're
Thank you.
especially creative and using the different strategies and tools that are at everybody's disposal, but you can apply them differently.
Thank you, Rick. It's a gift. I don't take it, it's, you get sort of divine providence comes in, and I like to see what's out there and how do we move the shelves around? How do we make it sort of understandable on the simplest, most basic ways for people? Because I think our industry in particular has a tendency to complicate things and to go a little too much into the weeds and lose the purpose of, like, what does it do? How's it going to help me, as opposed to what it is, and understanding all of that. One also great analogy, which I love to use with people, Rick, and I know you do as well, is asking people, do you have a TFSA? Most people will say, yes, I do have a TFSA. And why do you have a TFSA? Because your money grows tax-free. What's the downside of our TFSA today? You can only put in $6,000. So what if I were to be able to show a business owner that they could have a TFSA for their business that had no limit, no limit. You could put as much money in as you want. Your money grows tax-free. You can access it pretty much tax-free and pass it along virtually tax-free. Is that something that a business owner would be interested in? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
What's it called? It's called corporate owned life insurance. That's how it works. And then if you want to add one more knitch to it to take it to a higher level, if they don't want to, let's say they have a great place to invest their money. It's going in. I have some clients who are in the auto finance business, so they make 24% of their money. They don't want to take any money out of that investment, but you can use financing, immediate financing or premium financing, to have that no limit TFSA, where you put good money in and then you use your insurance as collateral or the cash value to borrow back the money to put it back into your business, because you're borrowing to invest. You get to deduct the interest and some other ancillary costs. And now you've got something even more beautiful. But it comes down to one thing, Rick: planning. And having, I always say that my greatest competition in 30 years is just getting people's attention. We're living like a very ADD world out there. People need to spend the time, but the results of spending that time can be incredible for their families and for charities, or for both.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, this has been a tremendous half hour or so that we spent together. You're a tremendously creative guy, and you're very inspiring when you connect with people and help them make a difference to their life of their family and to the life of their charitable causes. And you think of the impact, the ripple impact on that for our broader community. So Mark, congratulations on all the success you've attained so far. Thank you for continuing to share to the industry, continuing to share to me and so many others. You're an inspiration. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. I really appreciate that. And, I just wanted to say that we came up with an annual goal of wanting to create $100 million of new charity, working with our clients, working with allied professionals like you, or working with charities. And we did just over $61 million. We're on pace this year for about 80 million. There's tremendous opportunity for all of us to be collaborating together. This is not just Mark Halpern or Rick Goldring. This is really about spending the time to learn about it and introduce it to clients or introduce it to donors. But the one thing collaborate. But the one thing we can't do is ignore it. There's just too much riding on the line. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience about this, Rick.
Well, thanks, Mark, again. And thanks to everybody for tuning in, whether you're watching or whether you're listening. Thanks for tuning in to the Mayor of Money. Remember, stay positive and test negative, and we'll see you next time on the Mayor of Money.
Thank you for listening to the Mayor of Money podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. If you'd like to have a one-on-one discussion with Rick, or have an idea for a particular guest or topic, contact him at rick@rickgoldring.com. See you next time on the Mayor of Money podcast.